I found out that my husband and sister are playing house with my newborn while I was at work. So I ruined all their plans and left them in the gutter. I went back to work 6 weeks after having my daughter Julie because we needed the money, and my husband Brett said he could handle the days while working nights at the warehouse. My sister Chloe had just lost her job and offered to help with the baby during the day so Brett could sleep before his shifts. It seemed perfect since Chloe loved Julie and was staying in our guest room until she got back on her feet. I'd leave at 7 in the morning for my job at the medical center, pump during breaks, and rush home by 5:30 to take over. Brett would be getting up for his 8 a.m. MR shift, and Chloe would help with dinner and the bedtime routine. For 3 weeks, everything ran smoothly. Brett was getting enough sleep, Julie was happy, and Chloe seemed to really enjoy helping out. She'd send me pictures during the day of Julie's tummy time or her first real smile. I was grateful to have family support since my mom lived across the country, and Brett's parents weren't interested in being grandparents. Then little things started feeling off. I'd come home and Brett would be freshly showered even though he was supposed to just be waking up. Chloe would be wearing my robe, saying hers was in the wash. Julie would be in outfits I didn't recognize, and when I asked, Chloe said she bought them as surprises. Brett started criticizing how I did things with Julie, saying I was holding her wrong or feeding her too much, which was weird since he'd never cared about baby stuff before. One day I forgot my breast pump parts and had to drive home at lunch. I walked in quietly because Julie might be napping. That's when I heard them in the living room. Brett was laughing at something on TV while Chloe was folded into his side on the couch, Julie sleeping on her chest. They looked like a family. I stood there watching and Chloe said something about how this was so much better than her old life. Brett kissed the top of her head and said they made a good team. Neither of them saw me. That night I tested them. I mentioned how tired Brett looked for someone who'd been sleeping all day. He said taking care of a baby was exhausting. Chloe jumped in saying Brett had been so hands-on with Julie, doing all the feedings and changes. But Julie was exclusively breastfed from bottles I pumped, and I'd been marking them. Half weren't being used. They were giving her formula. When I asked about it, they said Julie seemed hungrier than what I was providing. They'd made that decision together without asking me. The next morning, I called in sick but left the house like normal. I parked down the street and waited an hour before walking back. The door was locked, which was weird because I never locked it when leaving. I used my key and found Brett making breakfast in boxers while Chloe sat at the table in my silk nightgown, the one Brett bought me for our anniversary. Julie was in her bouncer between them. They were discussing weekend plans like I didn't exist. When they saw me, Brett grabbed a shirt and Chloe pulled the nightgown closed. I asked why Chloe was wearing my clothes. She said she'd spilled coffee on her pajamas. They looked at each other, having some silent conversation. That's when Julie started crying and they both rushed to her. Brett picked her up and started bouncing her the way I do. Chloe grabbed the bottle I'd prepared and handed it to him. They worked in sync, like they'd been doing this routine for weeks. I realized they had been. Every day while I was gone, they were playing house with my baby. I went to work the next day but told my supervisor I was taking my accumulated maternity leave effective immediately, just needed to wrap up some cases. She approved it for starting the following Monday. I didn't tell Brett or Chloe. Instead, I watched them closer. Brett was leaving for work later and later, sometimes not until 9. Chloe was doing our laundry together, Brett's boxers mixed with her underwear. They'd made a shared playlist on the speaker. Saturday, I said I had to go in for an emergency shift. Instead, I went to my friend Diana's house and watched our Ring doorbell camera from my phone. At 10 a.m., Chloe and Brett came out with Julie in the stroller I bought. They walked to the farmer's market holding hands, Brett pushing the stroller while Chloe linked her arm through his. They looked like every other young couple with a baby. People stopped them to coo at Julie and they'd smile, accepting compliments like proud parents. Sunday night, I acted normal. Monday morning, I got dressed for work and left. Brett barely said goodbye, already texting Chloe to come downstairs. I drove around the corner and called them both into a conference call. I told them my maternity leave started today so they didn't need to watch Julie anymore. Dead silence. Then Brett asked what I meant. I said I'd be home with Julie for the next 8 weeks, fully paid, so Chloe could focus on job hunting and Brett could actually sleep during the days. Chloe started stuttering about still wanting to help. I said that wouldn't be